sensor above ground or a drone flying to show the weak spots. But, if you have a drone in the air showing the weak spots, then you don't know if is it weak because of water, is it weak because of nutrients. So then, if you have a sensor that can measure water and tell you that, or if you're good about soil testing, you can tell if it's, because of this or that. So once you get into those, I feel like multiple sensing, and then also, of course, the human eye. That's the one that we always have. Yeah. And so you're kind of building on what what the sensor's telling you, what maybe a drone's telling you, and kind of then narrowing it down to like, what's really the root of the problem, instead of just kind of throwing solutions at something that might not work,
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the International Greenkeepers Podcast. Today I have Benton with me again. You might remember Benton from a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about turf technologies and how the industry was changing. Now we've dived a little bit deeper into that topic, talking exactly about the specific technologies, so the drones, the robotic line markers, the robots, the soil sensors, and how they're all working together and how they're going to come and improve the sports facilities. So really been looking forward to this one. So without further ado, here we go. First of all, Benton, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast again. I know last time we had a good chat about everything that was going on within the industry, but this time we want to really hone in on what exactly is happening, how the various parts of that, things like the drones, the smart irrigation systems, these technologies are really sort of changing golf courses, football stadiums, rugby anything sports stuff, how they are really changing the environment. But yeah, thanks for being here again. We'll get straight into it then, I guess.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat about it and how kind of all of these build on each other towards a kind of a technology ecosystem for turf management.
Yeah, so last time like I said, we spoke quite a lot about the things you do, the advancements. The first topic that we've got is the smart irrigation system. So we mentioned before that one of the big things in the UK was, boreholes licenses being revoked or even limited, so you can only extract a certain amount of water. What are you seeing over in the States and the things that you're working with or working on? How are you seeing those things change and sort of these irrigation systems adapt into the courses and the stadiums?
Yeah, I think especially with technology, of course the newest irrigation systems being installed are always going to be top of the line and new and fancy, and you can control from your phone. But I do think the cool part is where you see these kind of retrofittable smart irrigation systems that can help those courses that with the aging irrigation system and no budget to necessarily do an overhaul. A local course near me, I know, is installing some kind of on each controller little Wi-Fi beacons to now they can actually schedule watering and do that instead of just hand watering and stuff. So I think just all the trickle down from the biggest, fanciest, newest smart irrigation system or irrigation system down to being able to help the aging and old irrigation system is where the technology is cool, because it's all getting more efficient,
I think that's a very good point. Like you say about installing on old systems, because we're seeing that a lot, especially now. Systems that were put in the 70s and the 80s are sort of pretty much coming to the end of life. They might have had pumps changed and little bits and heads and various bits along the way, but the actual fundamentals, the pipe work, the wiring in some cases, or even the system, the panels which are on the wall, are actually coming towards the end of the life, as I mentioned. So how those are being retrofitted to those systems to sort of bring them up, to a standard, or so how is that being done exactly?
The one I've seen in the local course is, like I said, kind of just, I think they had a pretty good bare bones of the actual piping and stuff, and definitely leaky heads. But they just weren't able to control it. They'd be out there at night turning on each head from the controller and stuff. So, just being able to bring that to the modernness of being able to schedule and check on it, even if you don't necessarily see every head running. they're at least able to not have to be there when they're watering. I know of another course a few hours away in Idaho that was looking to do some cool irrigation updates. I wish I had more information on it because it seemed like one that could benefit from some of this stuff, and I think that's the direction they're going. I just haven't chatted with them. But, I mean, I guess some of it does come down to whether you're, the piping is, if it's failing, then you're going to have to dig it up and stuff. But some of the ones that maybe they still got some life left in that, but they're just getting run ragged by having to be on property to water. I do think that's where some of the more reasonable, probably cheaper, budget-friendly stuff is that could retrofit and kind of bring you into a modern area of irrigation efficiency.
Yeah. So in my mind,
I mean,
I was thinking. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a potential area for this would be, if they're putting in, for example, you dig a couple of holes, put in a few more valves, or are able to adapt the system that's already there because, you're doing watering overnight and you're putting systems on so you don't have to worry about it. It's working with, moisture sensors, so it's putting enough on in those certain areas.
Yeah, and I have seen, more irrigation companies and more specialty companies putting in, flow meters along the whole way, so that way you can track leakages easier too.
And then I'm thinking, if it reduce pressure in certain areas, if you've only got to run one sprinkler as opposed to 6 at a time, that old pipe work that you've got could potentially have another 5-10 years.
Yeah, I have a good one that ties into one of the later ones we'll talk about, robotic mowers. I was talking with a friend who works for an irrigation company here in the U.S. that's always coming out with new technology stuff and sensors to go along with their irrigation and making it more efficient on their new systems. And he was saying that he thinks they could have a kind of almost sensor near the robotic mower to where once it went out and triggered, it could pause any irrigation even if it was scheduled. That, hey, you're off for now kind of thing, so the head doesn't hit it, And then when it goes back and charges, it'll pop back on and it can, if the irrigation's scheduled, it can go back on. And so I was like, that got my interest piqued for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then with that as well, I suppose you could schedule it to say, right, it's cutting greens 1, 2, 3, 4, or it's whatever order it's doing in that's logical for the course. And then behind it, the sprinklers come on once it leaves the green.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's got stuff that built on our third topic, soil and turf sensors, that directly plays into all these new irrigation systems on. Yeah, being able to, show you only the heads that you need. The TerraRad sensor people have been putting on the back of equipment. I don't know if you've seen that. I think they're based out of Germany. But it's kind of they use some sort of magnetic rays or something to measure moisture as people have been putting them on the back of fairway mowers or just utility carts and you drive. And they produce a cool heat map, green is good and water and stuff. But then they also have it loaded to where it shows you which irrigation heads are laid over in those areas as well. And I don't know if it's quite automatic yet, but they're working towards it to where then it can be like, only water, heads 3, 4, 5 on this hole because that's the only one that needs it right now, instead of just that same old mentality of, all right, we got to water all of number 1 because everything. That's what we do, And I mean, that trickles down to fertility and all that as well as far as prescription maps go, but irrigation and watering is where it's first going to be incorporated, where you're going to have sensors telling the irrigation to schedule it and kind of, you can always check in on it, but it can be almost autonomous if you want it to.
Yeah, it's amazing. So with that as well, is there any, data or anything that you can share with us or any knowledge that you're aware of, for example, water reduction? So is there any crazy numbers where you've seen at a course they've used X amount less of water?
Yeah, definitely. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I'm working with one soil sensor company, Groundworks, and they're based out of California. And I mean, that's just where so much of this is being driven because the government's telling them that they have to use less water. So yeah, there was, I could share the case study link and we can share it in the show notes or something, because they had quite 2 or 3 different ones that were those jaw-dropping numbers of millions of gallons saved, and just big water budgets in California too. They're paying for their water, so I was they saved $100,000 the first month or something. That's just crazy. By just by that mindset change, and you probably could have that mindset change without even putting sensors in the ground if you really wanted to get, nitpicky and start writing down as you drive around, oh, I'm only going to water head number, whatever. But that seems tedious, and that's what this technology is kind of making possible, is this precision turf management and being able to water what you need to water and not water what you need to water, which is healthier grass, better playing surfaces, less inputs. Like, it's kind of a win-win. You just have to commit and invest in some technology and kind of that mindset shift of, oh, this is different than how I have been doing it.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and like you say, having that data as well. It's all good and well, us talking about it and saying this is the future and this is better, but you actually being able to provide evidence to say, that course has saved 100,000 a month in water is incredible. It's massive, and that's the sort of data that the superintendents, the people, the turf managers need to pass on to their management to say this is what this technology could do for us. Whether that, we know in most cases it might be the money goes into elsewhere in the club or whatever, but knowing that as a club we're doing our bit and actually, being more efficient, more eco-friendly, and potentially being able to use the budgets elsewhere as well on, newer machinery, more staff, those sort of things.
Here you go. I pulled up the numbers that I had from this one company. It was at Aviara Golf Club in California. And from April to September of 2022 versus the very next year, April to September 2023, they saved 27% of their water with 23 million gallons of water saved and $144,000 cost reduction.
23 million gallons of water saved.
Gallons of water, yeah. I mean, that's positive.
That's not even a number that's comprehensible.
The naysayers of golf to be like, golf courses use this much, and it's like, well, we're reducing it. And it was cool. They had, and the way they did that was they used this threshold with their sensors, and if they were within that range, then they were great. If they went below it, and there's different ways. You could look at Aviara that did it one way where they let it get low and they do one big deep infrequent watering and get back above it and then let it dry down, and then you'd see some other courses where they'd kind of just do little shots and it'd kind of bump right up in between their numbers that they wanted to keep and stuff. But they were able to, accomplish what they were trying to do probably even before they had the sensors in the ground. It just was now possible and, easier. Just has it in front of you. You have the data. You don't have to just be having that running list of hot spots in your head anymore. You can kind of have some help with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think now's probably a good time to talk about the soil sensors and turf sensors, to be honest, considering we're pretty much already onto that little topic anyway.
Yeah.
But one question that's just come to my mind, and I asked this because actually one of the colleges that I was doing some work at, we got some sensors in, and we put sensors at different levels. So we put one at 150 mil and then one only 50 mil down at 200 mil. But the difference between the water content, and then obviously we know where we wanted the root mass to grow. It was a ryegrass field. We probably want it more down to that 200.
Yeah.
Knowing that information and seeing the differences, the importance of having your sensor in the correct place. What are your thoughts on that? How does that impact the, if you've got it at the top of the surface and you're putting your water on and you're still seeing, the leaf or the plant wilt, those sort of things.
Yeah. And I think that's where, with all this technology, you still got to find the right vendor and partner and correct implementation because, I think that is part of it. And, some sensors have a variable depth that you can change it, which is nice. Some have to bury this deep so that it can get connectivity or something. So, and I mean, also a golf course is very different from, 10 yards away to another 10 yards, 10 meters away because it could be wet. So also knowing where to place these meters because you can't put 5,000 of them out there and cover every square inch, not yet, So there's part of, being able to know your representative areas and where you do want to collect that data of where you want your root mass growing and stuff, and that's going to be different from your greens to your fairways to your rough and everything. So
how do you pick out those areas? So in my mind, obviously, I'm thinking sort of maybe lower areas, higher areas, areas where there's no
I think
trees.
You do a little bit of both. I think, that's where you lean on that superintendent or assistant or whoever that's been there forever that can point out the hot spots and spots on the field that always give them trouble. So I think a healthy representation of good spots, bad spots, and, kind of somewhere middle of the road, as far as, I guess, wet, dry, and somewhere in the middle. And then it's just how many, more data is better. So ideally, if you could do that on every hole where you had, one sensor in your fairway of kind of where you think usually stays wetter than normal, drier than normal, and then somewhere kind of perfectly average would be awesome. Some sensors are cost prohibitive to do that. Some aren't reliable enough to do that many. It's technology is still sorting itself out. I think eventually there will be some that are robust enough to have really good connectivity and give you that multiple readings and all that, but then maybe they'll have it'll be a parent-child relationship where you have like one big one the size of the irrigation head, and then maybe some small ones, especially in a green, where maybe you can put that big sensor out on the edge, and then you can bury some little small pods running off that bigger one or something.
That's another thought for me.
There's definitely
a
limitation to these in-ground sensors on they're only there where you put them, So that's where I think the drones and maybe even that something like that TerraRad come in, where you can have a few things to check what's going on,
I think I was just about to say as well, Benton. Thoughts for me are knowing these networks and sort of how they evolve, and we don't actually really know the limitations of them yet. But even thinking of daft things such as even in this room here, the smart fire alarms, for example. You connect more than 3 to the network, and it absolutely gives up on life. It's understanding where these technologies move, and like you say, maybe it is a situation where you have, like you say, that parent and then all of the little, scouts or whatever around them that sort of collect the data and feedback. But you could potentially have real massive networks, even just within one golf course. So, there's a lot of infrastructure there as well to build behind that.
For sure. And I mean, the good news is that ag is wanting the same thing, agriculture. So it'll probably trickle down our way once they figure it out more. And that's just kind of what we're seeing anyways, is agriculture technology eventually making its way to the golf course and turf world. So their sensor technology gets better and ours gets better a few years later. Just connectivity or the networks as a whole become more reliable, and just the way the world's moving, wireless networks and smart everything is progressing for better or worse.
And we spoke quite a lot about water as well, and it is quite a big topic. But then when you think about other things such as to be a potential ability to measure the nutrients and the applications of things that we put into the surface.
Totally.
That there's so many things that we could go at. Even I don't know. Potentially, you could do some sort of system underground which will measure how much root density is within that area as well. I don't know. It'd probably be some sort of calculation, between two sensors or something. But the potentials are massive, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and then again, especially once you start pairing it with, one or two more other ways to observe and gather this data, whether, that's that sensor above ground or a drone flying to show the weak spots. But, if you have a drone in the air showing the weak spots, then you don't know, is it weak because of water? Is it weak because of nutrients? So then, if you have a sensor that can measure water and tell you that, or if you're good about soil testing, you can tell if it's, because of this or that. So once you get into those, I feel like multiple sensing, and then also, of course, the human eye. That's the one that we always have. And so you're kind of building on what what the sensor's telling you, what maybe a drone's telling you, and kind of then narrowing it down to what's really the root of the problem, instead of just kind of throwing solutions at something that might not work. Sometimes that problem area stays a problem area for years.
Yeah. And I know in the last podcast we spoke a bit about drones as well. And I mentioned we've got a rugby stadium, Harlequins, here in the UK, which send a drone up after every game, and they look at the surface to basically see where the damage areas are. Not so much for water or nutrients or anything like that. They want to see where the wear patterns have been, sort of how it's played. And then on the same side, we also spoke about, the idea of that drone could go up in the morning on a golf course. It could go over it. It could detect if there'd been an irrigation leak based on the information, as you say, it's gathered as well. Yeah. Seventh green has got low pressure. It goes over there and checks out, sends you a video to your office while you're busy planning out the day for everyone. Yeah. And then, you probably still want to go out and have a check of it anyway.
For sure.
Take a little video on your phone and everything else. But yeah, using that in collaboration, all these little bits that we're going to go through today, and building that portfolio of what exactly is going on. It's just, I find it so fascinating.
Yeah. And I definitely do think drones are cool because they just have such a multi-faceted use, just depending on the drone and the technology within the drone. But the mapping capabilities alone, all these technologies are requiring some sort of mapping. If you're mapping out a GPS sprayer, if you're mapping out a robotic mower, all this stuff. If they're not capable now, they will be capable where you're able to fly a high-quality drone and then get on your computer and draw out these boundaries instead of having to currently walk or drive the mower around the edge or drive your sprayer around. And there's still situations where that might even be better to do so, like being able to map out some on a drone and then go back and do some fine-tuning on the ground and stuff. But drones just, are so, they give you such a unique perspective that we haven't had in years past, and now drones are so accessible. If you're just trying to take pretty pictures, even, I feel like that shows you some stuff that you probably don't normally see on your sports field or golf course.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that
I was at a show, I think it was last year, I can't remember exactly which show it was, but they had one of it was basically their new product. It was a drone. It was massive. It was probably 3 meters by 3 meters.
Yeah, there's some pretty wild ones.
9 meters square, but it had a spray tank on it as well. And I remember we had a conversation with them, and I've spoken to someone else recently from a different company, and just the technology is incredible. They were saying about spot spraying weeds, and I know we've been doing it with tractors for years in the ag side of things, measuring chlorophyll and all those things. But sending the drone out, spot spraying a fairway or whatever, rather than sending a person out who's blanket spraying, and and obviously it's going to bring its own set of problems and probably certificates and all of those things and limitations. But just to have the option itself and say, you've put down, I don't know, this year you've done 20 litres of weed killing active ingredient. Last year you did 1,000 because you were doing everything. Huge. huge.
And that's when you start also getting government grants and subsidies for some of this stuff. Is like, hey, we're wanting to do this technology because we want to save. I know some California courses get water bill reductions or something if they are putting in soil sensors and able to prove, hey, we have a plan. This is what we're doing.
Well, this has always
who
been
knows
something...
how much it is and stuff, but like that, you're proving that you're doing what we need to do to make golf sustainable and survivable in the future, because restrictions are coming. So
this has always been something that I thought about, because particularly in the UK, I know because I've read up on it, there is grants and funding available for research essentially, and this is, well, there's no getting around it, research. If you're spending X amount less product or everything else, and investing in new equipment, new technologies, which are, at the end of the day, the idea is they become more efficient in every possible way, whether that's what you're putting out or what it's doing. So collecting that data with these sensors and everything else that we've got, there might actually be the possibility for clubs to get most of it paid for, and perhaps even
it's
earn some
it's
money.
Hard because that's just a complicated and scary thing to do, grant writing and trying to get those. But that's where I think working outside companies either focused on that type of thing or, just committing to those cold winter days of getting down and learning how to get yourself some money for it.
Well, that's it. We say it all the time, don't we? It happens in ag every day. It's constantly going on. It's not particularly the people that are out working on the fields that are obviously involved with the grants. It's more, there is other people using all of the data that they collect to go and find them the grants, so they're able to do the research on the corn or whatever.
I think that's where here in the U.S., the GCS AA and like regional stuff like that, that's where you can reach out and probably get some help or at least get pointed in the right direction for some help. Because, people are out there, and I feel like there'd be plenty of grant writers that would be stoked to help a golf course use less water. Everybody would like to do that. So,
imagine in 10 years' time the ag industry's coming to the greenkeepers asking them what's the next technology. It's been the other way around for the past 100 years.
And it is cool because it does trickle down even towards the professional landscaping industry. They definitely look towards us as like they really know how they're taking care of a grass kind of thing. So if they see us start using kind of more of these newer stuff and battery powered and all that, then start trickling down to those kind of avenues as well, and parks and rec departments and places that might not need to be as forward thinking. They're kind of just maintaining what they got and looking ahead. And
I think obviously some of these technologies that we spoke about might not necessarily be directly, integrated into what they do. But one of the big ones is what we'll talk about next is robotic mowers, particularly in private areas, houses, mansions, all those sort of things. These things are taking over. I personally think it's a great thing because, it just like robotic line markers, it frees up hands and opportunities to do other stuff, doing basically what would be just labour work, mowing an area. There is a bit of skill to it, no denying that. However, we can program that into a machine, and the person that's skilled can be monitoring and potentially doing other work as well. But the landscaping area, the domestic, I think that's the right word, sort of being able to set those up, and then they're able to go and do something else, almost double the money when they were working in someone's garden. Those things, again, trickle down from the sports turf, from the greenkeeping industry. So are you seeing that as well? Are you seeing more landscapers come to you in particular to work these?
Yeah, somewhat. It's definitely slow here in the U.S., I feel like. And I'm kind of out west, so I feel like it trickles from the East Coast out sometimes, or from California up. But I have gone to some trainings and almost kind of like the water restriction. There's communities and cities where battery powered and noise pollution is a huge thing. So they've already been forced to switch to battery powered leaf blowers and stuff, and so now they see this robotic mowers, and it definitely jumps out because it's quiet. Again, they can almost double what they do with their lawns if they can just have it mow the bulk of it and then come with their little electric weed eaters and trimmers to clean up and blow off and stuff. And so I do think it might, in the U.S., it might even take off more in the landscaping market, honestly, before golf. Because we just love our big yards and green spaces here, and but people don't like to mow them, so they're always paying somebody else. So I do think once, especially you always see young kids starting up their own lawn mowing companies and stuff. So I think you see a few of them start offering it, and it's every single time I've installed a demo or a mower somewhere, every member, every golfer stops and looks at it. So as soon as one house on the block gets a robotic mower, you're probably going to get a few of them knocking on your door to get the same thing. A little bit of the jealousy almost.
Definitely, because this is what I was thinking. In the UK, sports fields and training centres, for example, a lot of them, if they can't afford their own machinery or their own robotic line marker, would use for an example, they would get contractors in, and particularly the council level, they tend to get contractors in because the same contractor would cover quite a significant area. They'd turn up, drop the machine down, use the tablet, send it on its way.
Yeah.
And even for a landscaper or a gardener or those sort of things, to be able to take, obviously they'd have to do all the mapping out and stuff. But if they turned up at a property, set the mower out, even if they took it home and they were still paying, X amount to maintain it, because they've still got borders, hedges, trees, shrubs, the amount of areas that the robot can't get to be able to put that out. I haven't seen that yet, but it's a whole world.
So there's one company right now, Nexmo, that does do that. Basically, they call it drop and go. Where it's that, you have the batteries and the mower back at your shop. You charge them up. You send out your landscaping crew, and they drop them off on house 1 through 5. They trim and do the borders and the blowing and detail work behind it, and it beeps when number 2's done, and you bump it to number 6, the next house down the line, and keep going. And I know Cress is working on their own, I think they're calling it drop and mow system, where it's that same thing where you you go and you map out all your different accounts in your yards and stuff, and then you drop it off, it mows, and that way you will have to be swapping out battery packs. It's not doing itself, and it's not mowing at night. But it's a lot more similar to the current workflow for them anyways. They get to a house, they unload their trailer, they push their mower around, they do the other stuff. So it's kind of similar where, they just take out a step of them physically pushing back and forth on those yards. And I think those units will probably maybe move a little faster because there's somebody there watching it. It's not just moving around. Like there's some ways that maybe it's made to mow down grass a little better than just maintain it compared to some of the current ones. So, it's kind of exciting to see the different technologies sort itself out. Because even in the U.S. here, there's some kind of almost zero-turn landscaping deck mower, robotic ones that are coming out, kind of truly for those big commercial landscaping. I feel like we're going to have all the way down from the little tiny Roomba robotic mowers all the way up to the big, almost traditional fairway mower, real mower, robotic mowers.
I'm getting this whole sort of dystopian. I can't think of the word. Dystopian sort of imagery in my mind right now, where there's just all of these robot mowers going around the streets, just cutting lawns because they're contracted to do house number 3, 5, and 7, and then someone else does the ones between. Because there's some robots here in the UK which do deliveries. They were on trial in certain areas. And they go around the streets and basically have fast food orders in them. So I'm now imagining little mowers going around the streets.
I definitely think it's possible, and everybody in society is getting more used to it. So in a few years, seeing a robot mowing lawn will just make sense instead of being like, what the heck? So part of it's just time and natural adaptation of the whole world, not just the turf grass world of kind of the new way of doing it, but there will still be so many, regular people mowing grass the same way, and landscaping companies still doing it the same way for so many years, and golf courses still using the same stuff because it's slow to incorporate, and it's not right for every spot right now for terrain limitations or power source, or they don't get good service from the wireless satellites at their place. So not every course is going to be able to do it right now, and definitely not every course can do it as a full implementation. Sports fields are definitely nicer because they're usually flat. You're usually close to some sort of clubhouse or power or something. So that's where I do think it'll maybe be the first professional market where it really takes off, because sports field would be great to just, you let the robot mow it every day, and then on game days you'd get your nice, sharp, barely used pitch day mower or game day pitch mower out, and you mow a nice little finish pattern on it. It's great. You don't have to worry about it for 5 days a week until you have to put the finish mow on it, and then it's game day, and then back to letting the robot do it, kind of thing. So
it's got really
I definitely think you'll see a lot of combo of some robots mowing stuff, and then also just using as a supplement for a while, whether that's just putting less hours on your mower, even maybe the robots mow the rough once a week, and your membership still wants you to cut it with the regular one once a week or something, or every other week. So I definitely think there will be some slow transitions into it instead of just like we're just going full bore. Everything's getting mowed by robots right away. I think we're still pretty far from that, which is comforting, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the key as well. When people, I know a lot of people that have been in this industry for quite a long time, and their concern is, as rightly so, but as most people would say, it's going to take us job. And like you say, I don't see that being the problem. I think it will be a combination, and it always will be a combination, because ultimately you need those skills and knowledge there on site, even if it's just doing other bits, or like we said, maintaining or watching or monitoring. Like, we will always need that aspect, well, particularly probably in our lifetimes, to maintain those surfaces to the standard that's required. And
and if we didn't have the limitations I just talked about, if it was like, oh, these mowers are just as good and the same everywhere and can work on this course, that course, no matter where you're at, then maybe I'd be worried that like, oh shoot, we're going to lose our jobs to robots in the next 10 years. But I think it's still just going to be a slow transition because of those limitations and just because of adaptation. And maybe it's not somebody losing a job, but there's always those courses where you just can't fill those last 3 or 4 crew guys during the summer. You're just rotating that one guy who just isn't cut out for it, or doesn't show up after a week. You spend a week training a guy and pouring your time into teaching him how to run a mower, and then he's gone. So keep your good guys, pay them more, and maybe you're just not having to fill that 2 or 3 crew guy spot that seems to never work out. And this way you can just keep your skilled guys and teach them something else that makes them a better, more rounded crew guy, instead of just, I've kind of been saying, like, when you're mowing rough and semi-rough, you're just maintaining the status quo. You're not necessarily improving the course. It's kind of the bare minimum to get a golf course open to play, is like mow the grass. So if you can kind of take that one bare minimum off your plate on one section of the course, then you're gonna probably not fire anybody, but you're probably gonna use that guy to do something that you've been putting off, or teach them that job that could help the course a little more.
Well, even the club that I do some work at, the football club, in my mind, I would say, if that mower could go out and mow every single day and it produced a good finish, it had a little roller on it, it didn't need to be massive, it would actually be better than the twice a week that I turn up and they're able to mow it. It being mown every single day, keeping that pattern in, up the standard.
The grass, likes to be mowed and adapted. And if we could mow how we've been mowing every day, you could get great results, but that's just not possible. So if a robot can mow something every day, then that grass blade's going to adapt to it and start growing nice and tight. And I do think that's like one of the almost kind of fringe benefits, is like we might just get healthier turf, which then leads again to less water, less inputs, less work for the crew to have to repair. Or
that's an interesting twist.
So
now thinking
saving
about
labor, but healthier plant just means a smoother operation.
That's an interesting twist. I was now thinking about companies, that grow seed, growing them in environments that are maintained by the robotic mowers, like you say, and then selectively breeding them to grow in a certain way which benefits the robotic mowers being cut every single day, because then you don't want a particular leaf, or you don't want it to grow in a particular way. So it might actually throw them off massively, because obviously they grow on sort of like a 5-year timeline where they've got they're 5 years ahead, because they need that crop they need it ready for then. They're already working on it. But if we bring in this mass robotic mowers that wants to produce a different type of surface, it might be slightly lower and shorter.
I saw a demo of there's a company, Firefly, here in the US, that's making a really cool looking traditional fairway robot mower, real mower, all electric, really cool machine, really well made. But they started as a sod harvesting company, and they still do it. So they produce a big hybrid diesel electric sod harvester, which has been cool, because with electric motors, you're just able to get a lot more precise and do all this calculations and force and efficiency and stuff. But they got into the robotic mowing game for their sod farms, and they tried to build this big, huge 22-foot deck one, and it was just too complicated. And so now they kind of like made it smaller towards like kind of almost in between a triplex and a fairway unit. But they had it out at a sod farm, and they said that one of their sod harvesters was able to harvest 6 weeks earlier than before on something, because the grass was just happier and healthier and growing faster. And I even recently talked to somebody just this morning right before we got on a call that's helping Gil Hans do a big renovation on the east coast of the U.S. And once they're laying grass, they want to get a whole fleet of these small robotic mowers to start mowing on that kind of delicate sod that might not take a big mower or even just humans walking on it kind of thing. And if you can start cutting that grass and getting it to start putting down more roots and regrowing, then I bet you're going to have a quicker growing than before, which I think could be like a really interesting case study and like look at it as well, just because of that super light footprint of, put a fleet of them out there and start mowing, and then also have your soil sensors or whatever camera to watch that, make sure you're not overwatering or getting the right water on the sod too. And man, I bet we could see a drastic reduction in recovery and just how you get grass grown in and stuff, which is kind of cool.
But even that then, as you said, 6 weeks sooner, that's a potential 2 or 3 more crops a year. That's ridiculous.
That's a lot of money.
And that's not even thinking about, expansion or anything like that, using the same amount of square meterage as they have now to have potentially...
While also saving labor dollars on people not mowing and diesel fuel because it's electric. It starts adding up, and I think that's where some of these companies are starting to do a good job of building their own little calculators. Because you buy a mower right now, you don't think about it as a piece of equipment that's going to give you a return on investment. It's something you buy. You have to pay somebody to sit on it. You have to pay diesel fuel and maintenance costs and stuff. So switching this mindset of I'm making this upfront cost on this new robotic mower technology, but there's a potential where I can get this money back from how we've been doing it, from labor savings, fuel savings, mechanics. The fairway mower demo I saw, they went down to like how much overlap you usually do on your fairway. So they were really getting in the nitty gritty of, let us take what you currently do, show you how much it costs, and then show you what it could be. So maybe this $160,000 US price tag feels a little better kind of thing.
Well, even with all of that, like you say, I know so many golf courses which have got their own little nurseries where they grow probably enough to do half of a green or something if they had a serious problem. But I'm thinking that most of them have got drainage, irrigation. It's normally a pretty standard setup for the rest of the course. I'm thinking if that robotic mower is out there and then maintaining areas like that as well, there's no reason why the club can't say, right, every 3 or 4 weeks during the summer we could potentially sell a quarter of that, harvest it, or if we really wanted to, we could we could go and redo areas we didn't think were up to the standard of the rest of the course, knowing that we could grow it in so quickly because that machine's basically maintaining it. And like I said, then could also have a potential return on itself as well if you're able to harvest from that and sell it locally, even if it was just at the clubhouse. It's still money coming back towards the team and the club.
Totally. I think, and it's all just kind of different mindset changes, and because I think golf courses and clubs are going to just have to be smart to survive in the future and stuff. The uber wealthy ones will always be around, but the kind of middle of the road and lower budget type spots I feel like where they feel intimidated by the technology, but where I think it's going to help it. It's really cool. The 9-hole course I've mentioned, I just got the robotic mower demo going, and it's cool because an investor bought it a few years ago. Somebody that was vacation in the area and played golf a ton. So they wanted to invest, but they didn't want to change it into some, private club. They just wanted to keep it, make sure it survives, basically. So, they have a rough mower that's being held up by, ratchet straps and stuff. So I was playing golf there, and took note of that, and I was like, all right, we'll get them. And so, it's not the course that you would think would be the first one in my area that was interested, but it's the one that I'm like, oh, this would, because every time I go play golf there's the same guys on the same mowers mowing from whenever I'm playing to whenever I leave. And, if they could start then, hitting the hot spots and fixing those leaky irrigation heads, like you'd start seeing a real improvement. It's an already great course for what they have and the crew and the budget and stuff. But yeah, being able to just shift those hours and budget from, those 4 guys that probably are their crew that pretty much mows the whole time they're there to like actually doing some other stuff would be pretty sweet, and where I think they could like really gain some ground and see some marked improvement.
Yeah, I always say it a lot, and I think it's probably not the right words to say, but with sports fields in particular, like fairways, you can hide so much with good mowing practices, mowing a couple of times a week, having the machine set right. Even if you've had to reduce fertilizer amounts, those sort of things, being able to stripe it up, burn some lines in, make it presentable, is almost as good in some situations as actually putting a fertilizer on and having it glowing green.
Yeah.
And cutting it once a week.
Yeah, and like the ease of maintenance too on, these current iterations of the kind of razor blade flail mower, robotic mowers it feels different. But man, if you're dedicated and you want a nice, cut quality, sharp blades are, just as important to turf health as anything. We've all seen the ragged cuts on low-end courses where you're like, oh man, if we could just get you sharp blades, like your course would automatically improve. So like being able to go around and zip off razor blades with a Phillips head screwdriver. I bought like a really small, kind of cheap handheld drill to work on the mowers, so it's not too strong to strip it. But like that way I'm not doing it. Man, the other day I was so proud of myself. I had my little tool bag and just whipped it out. In 5 minutes, taking your time, you can have new blades on and off and running. And especially on some of them, if you're smart, you just buy 2 extra sets of cutting disc or something, or an extra set, change them in the shop, and then even faster kind of thing. So I think mowing frequency, and then being able to feel a little more confident on changing out blades and that type of maintenance compared, if you're the do-it-all superintendent or greenskeeper at a course where you're not savvy with mechanics or sharpening reels and stuff, then this could also be like a big relief to you to have something more simple and approachable to maintain than that kind of big machinery.
Well, that's a big one. Like you say, that so many of us are doing multiple jobs, not just one. So being able to pull all these things together and utilize them, just saving that hour in the morning having to prepare something, for example, it's really good. But just bringing it back, I wanted to go over, the last topic that I had in mind, which was basically the brainchild of all of these things. Yeah. It's all being ran by a computer. These computers are what is said as artificial intelligence, but we all know it's essentially machine learning, because we aren't at the stage of artificial intelligence yet, and that's a different conversation. But what these are learning, the data that they're gathering, the systems that these are being put into as well, I think is something that I just want to touch on again. I know we mentioned it last time, but people might not have heard that the last episode is there's so many different softwares at the moment. How are we going to bring all of these together?
I think the kind of what I've been calling the digital management platforms are where like so much of this will live, and the hub of it. And ideally that's going to be open source, or at least collaborative enough to where you can have a central hub if you want. It might be separate from everything else, but hopefully it can work with everything else you have. So you log into your, how me and you connected turf assistant, log into your turf assistant, and hopefully that means you can have your whatever brand soil sensor you have it docked there or on a tab somewhere, and then you have your robotic mower fleet that you can click on and check on where this is and that is. Because currently the robotic mowers are cool because they have an app on your phone, but once you start having more of them, you definitely need to be able to get on your computer and sit down and look at it in a little more professional setting, I feel like, and that'll all work itself out. But again, hopefully, even if it just is kind of linking to their back end within the Turf Assistant dashboard or something, that's great, but ideally, hopefully you could kind of really integrate these things to where it is a similar workflow in that dashboard, so when you click on your soil sensors, it looks similar. The data looks similar to when you click on, your drone footage, your drone data. But just somewhere where this can all live and work together. Right now, it'd be great if it all just lived in one spot just so you could look at it all. But eventually, hopefully it's all living in one spot to then feed the machine of, this is your irrigation schedule, this is when you should fertilize, the weather's going to do this, don't spray this day. So kind of just like you said, the machine learning and predictive modeling part of it. I feel like modeling has gotten really popular in the U.S., growing degree days and different disease models or irrigation models and stuff. So having that at your fingertips, and again, it's great because it can tell you should do this, but you don't have to. You're still the decider, and you can go in and hopefully, again, on that dashboard, have an override feature and be like, no, we sprayed this day instead, and we're going to do this. Sorry, Siri, I'm not going to do this. So you can always still have control, but I think even just having suggestions that's funny. Siri just picked up me talking on my phone. So I think having suggestions of just, I've seen, the labor boards on these digital job boards or digital management platforms start learning when you mow what. So when you log on Tuesdays, it's like, oh, Jim likes to mow greens on Tuesdays. I'll pre-fill those crew guys for him. And you can change it if you want, but then that's just one less step of, oh, it knows that I like to mow greens and tees on Tuesdays and fairways and approaches on Wednesdays. So kind of just that predictive can help. It can be a guide, but it doesn't have to be the truth or the gospel. But I do think it kind of just takes stuff off your plate and kind of gives you just a little breathing room, which I feel like is kind of the point of the technology. Or at least that's how I've been pitching it. It'll make your grass better maybe, but I think it's just making our lives a little better and easier. As intimidating and it feels like upfront, investment, in mindset change. I do think if you buy in, it'll change how you do things. I think there's a few guys in the U.S. that have really been outspoken. John Riley, Turf Monkey Boy on Twitter. He's an older guy, and he said he used to be the same type of superintendent that did the same thing and would work, 15-hour days to prove how much he loved his golf course and would aerify this day because they did that this day last year. But, he started leaning into data and why they're really doing stuff, and he changed how he did it. And he's never had a better golf course, and I don't think probably ever had a better work-life balance and just happiness in general. So I do think it requires a little bit of change, which is scary, but then I think it does pay off and can kind of create a new way for this industry to survive, because I feel like we've all felt the burnout and kind of what are we going to do? How can this change? So I think this can be a way for that to change.
Yeah, that leads me on quite well to the next question, or probably two questions actually I have for you. So first of all, do you think we will be in a situation where, golf courses, or even sports stadiums that are nearby could share information between them and say, right, listen, we've got grey leaf, we've got Fusarium, there's a potential that, we've got the birds here, they're heading south for the winter months.
I mean, I think for sure. I think it'd be cool if you saw, Turf Assistant or, some those platforms start, trying to preach that or something, or eventually of hey, you can opt in to be part of the group share. And so you have that tab on your dashboard that's all the courses within the, or you could set the range within 10 miles or 20 miles or your state or your county or whatever. And if they've opted in, then you can kind of see whatever data they want to share or see what they're seeing. I do think you got to know that data from one spot to another is going to be different. Green speeds don't mean the same at each course, or ball roll, should I say. Goals are different. So I do think we can't let it turn into another pissing contest of that my numbers are better than yours. Because I feel like that's what's led kind of to the secrecy sometimes in like high end courses of no, I can't tell you what I'm doing because then you'll do it and then my job's in trouble and stuff. So I do think overall we're getting better as an industry on sharing, and I think that's just part of it. You know, the USGA has that cool GS3 ball now.
Yeah.
And it's been cool to see people just share those numbers more and post what their daily green speeds and ball roll and stuff like that is. And I think it's just an openness to sharing. And I'd love, again, for the USGA to maybe poke the bear a little bit and encourage other users of the ball to share it more or have some sort of kind of database for that to make use of this mass collection of data. But I think that's coming, and there's still a little bit of secrecy and I don't want to share with you yet, but I do think this technology will make it easier for the superintendents that do want to share, because if they're using the same technology, then it's great to kind of chat and see what you're doing compared to somebody else. You know, even as a Crest dealer, I've learned some tips and tricks from some golf course superintendent down in California that's had 20 of the Crest mowers out. You know, he's had more experience with them now, so that sharing and helping each other with this new technologies and mindset, I think, is where it'll help. And it's easier with technology.
I think even from a design aspects, you know, I'm conscious that we don't have much time left now, but you know, designing new golf courses, stadiums has always been quite a big project, and obviously takes a lot of maths and a lot of time. But to be able to put all this data in and say, right, we want this certain type of hole, we want it to play in this certain way, this is the landscape we've got now, how can we work with that? And for, you know, a machine to then output some data and say, right, with what you've got, and to minimize resources, you know, moving materials, time, all of those things, we can design a course that would be like this. Well, I say we, the machine's saying that. But using that data that you've collected from other courses, you know, that are nearby, for example, you know, they get rainfall amounts, you know, how the moisture sits at different levels, trees, shade, sun.
Yeah, there's one of the major golf course construction companies, and now they've started managing golf courses as well, Landscapes Unlimited here in the U.S. Whenever I first kind of started getting into my technology business and stuff, I talked with them, and they're doing really cool stuff with that modeling of drones as they're doing construction. But now that they're managing courses too, they're collecting data all the way from, you know, the club, food and beverage level, everything, and like creating this big data matrix to then help their other clubs run more efficiently as well and be able to comp what this cost here or what a fairway renovation looked like there and get a general ballpark cost there. Just being able to streamline and like just visualize. You know, I saw a 3D rendering of a potential golf course that made me start being like, oh, we're going to see like golf course projects uploaded to simulators.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're going to, you know, Gil Hans and the design team are going to have to sell the owner of the golf course on different layouts by having them play a simulator round or something, you know? I mean,
know it.
people that are spending the money on a golf course are particular. And, if you could deliver them a experience or at least just show them what it's going to look like and how it's going to play, I think that's like potential. I mean, that's the stepping outside of turf for technology in golf and sports fields and stuff. I mean, it's unlimited as far as just the efficiencies of a club in general. I don't think I can speak on that very generally because it's all just business technology and management systems and stuff. But I do think the whole aspect, design to running a golf course, everything can kind of start becoming more efficient and possible with some technology.
Well, that's it. We've spoke a lot about our aspects and how it changes, you know, the maintenance of a course. But seeing it from the other side, ultimately a golf course wants to play well, and the ability to adapt it and change it. And even if, you know, it's an infrastructure that you've already got, you know, having a fairway mown in a different pattern or direction or something which complements the green better or, you know, promotes better, you know, shots towards a different area, you know, to change the way people play, and then you can implement trees and those sort of things. Using that technology again, which is the backbone of it.
Yeah, and just getting the numbers. I mean, I feel like in data to show owners and stakeholders, I feel like is a powerful thing too, of backing up your decisions and backing up the need to do something different and change or renovate something. So, yeah, I feel like it can be intimidating, but I think there's technology out there right now that pretty much anybody can incorporate and start seeing a change or benefit without a ton of upfront costs. Some of them are going to cost you some money, but I do think you can start low-hanging fruit and working your way up.
Yes, definitely. And I think we've covered quite a lot of things again today.
Yeah.
I've probably topped up the last podcast, which was obviously the aim of what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
I think to be honest, we've probably still got things we can talk about in the future as well. So it would be great to have you back. Perhaps we'll try and look at some other topics or those sort of things. But I just wanted to say, Benton, before we go, I really appreciate your time. It has been good to talk. The information I feel is valuable as well. It's non-biased information. This is what's going on in the industry. We try not to particularly mention, go down this certain route, but here are the options. There's lots of players in the market. But yeah, if anyone would like to contact you, Benton, how can they get hold of you?
I'm super active on Twitter at BPHTurf, or you can check out my website, turf2050.com. That has my contact info, and I'm usually responsive, so reach out. I'm happy to talk, and I'd love to do another podcast. Maybe after the winter golf show, I can come back and see what new stuff I can tell you about from the U.S. The golf show, industry show. In January or February.
Definitely. I'll look forward to that one.
Circle back. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Benton. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. Really appreciate it. If you have any topics you'd like covered in the future, or you'd actually like to be on the podcast, please do let us know. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. This podcast is available on all sorts of platforms, from YouTube to Spotify and everything in between, iTunes, all of those. And you can find various content on our website as well, which will link into the podcast. We do have free educational videos as well on the YouTube channel, so please do also check those out and give us a subscribe.